Well, I'm sure glad Mom married Waylon because he was one of the best stepdads I think you could have.
Waylon Jennings is often referred to as the man who survived the day the music died, a title stemming from the tragic day he gave up his seat on a plane that later crashed, killing some of the biggest names in the music industry at the time. Despite surviving that fateful day, Waylon's music career could not survive the way he could. Just months after it seemed like he was poised to reach new heights, he eventually gave up on the craft. Waylon Jennings was forever haunted by his last words to Buddy Holly. Now Waylon's daughter confirms the rumors about his final words. Let's go back and take a closer look at what actually happened from the beginning. Jennings was born on June 15, 1937, on the J.W. Bittner farm near Littlefield, Texas. The Jennings family lineage is traced back to Irish and Black Dutch roots. He was the eldest of 4 siblings. Their ancestry included a mix of Cherokee and Comanche families, along with Loreen's great-grandfather, who was a farmer and lawman from Tennessee. Originally, Jennings's birth certificate bore the name Wayland. However, it was altered after a Baptist preacher mistakenly praised Loreen for naming her son after Wayland Baptist College, which she was unaware of. Consequently, Loreen changed the spelling to Waylon. Though Jennings initially disliked the name, he later reconciled with it, acknowledging its significance in his life. After working as a laborer on the Bittner farm, William moved the family to Littlefield, where he established a retail creamery. When Jennings was 8 years old, his mother taught him to play the guitar using the tune 30 Pieces of Silver. He practiced on his relatives' instruments until his mother purchased a used Stella guitar for him, later upgrading to a Harmony Patrician. His musical influences in the early days included Bob Wills, Floyd Tillman, Ernest Tubb, Hank Williams, Carl Smith, and Elvis Presley. Jennings began performing at family gatherings before making his debut public appearance at the Youth Center alongside Anthony Bonanno. He then went on to perform at local Jaycees and Lions clubs, winning a talent show at Channel 13 in Lubbock with his rendition of Hey Joe. His talent was further showcased through frequent performances at the Palace Theater in Littlefield during local talent nights. At the age of 14, Jennings auditioned for a spot on KVOW in Littlefield, Texas. Impressed by his performance, owner J.B. McShann, along with Emil Macha, recorded Jennings and offered him a weekly 30-minute program. Jennings then formed his own band, the Texas Longhorns, recruiting Macha to play bass and other friends to join. Despite their blend of country, western, and bluegrass music, the band's style was not always well received. After getting into trouble multiple times, 16-year-old Jennings was persuaded by the superintendent to leave Littlefield High School. Upon dropping out, he began working at his family's store and took on various temporary jobs, convinced that music would become his career path. The following year, along with the Texas Longhorns, he recorded demo versions of Stranger in My Home and There'll Be a New Day at KFYO Radio in Lubbock. Meanwhile, he worked as a truck driver for the Thomas Land Lumber Company and later for the Roberts Lumber Company. Frustrated with the owner, Jennings quit after a minor driving incident. Jennings and other local musicians frequently performed at the country radio station KDAV. It was during this time that he crossed paths with Buddy Holly at a restaurant in Lubbock. Their acquaintance grew as they often met at local shows, and Jennings started attending Holly's performances on KDAV's Sunday Party. In addition to his on-air performances for KVOW, Jennings began working as a DJ in 1956 and relocated to Lubbock. His program, running from 4 hours in the afternoon to 10 in the evening, featured a mix of country classics, current country hits, and recordings from various genres, including early rock and roll artists like Chuck Berry and Little Richard. The owner reprimanded Jennings for his choice of music, and after playing 2 Little Richard records in a row, Jennings was fired. During his time at KVOW, Jennings caught the attention of DJ Sky Corbin from KLVT in Levelland. Impressed by Jennings' voice, Corbin visited him at the station after hearing him sing a jingle to the tune of Hank Snow's I'm Moving On. Jennings shared his struggle to live on a $50-a-week salary, prompting Corbin to invite him to visit KLVT. Eventually, when a position opened up at KLVT, Jennings took over Corbin's role. Later, the Corbin family acquired KLLL in Lubbock and transitioned its format to country music, becoming a rival to KDAV. They hired Jennings as the station's first DJ, where he not only produced commercials but also collaborated with other DJs to create jingles. As the station's popularity grew, the DJs began making public appearances, including live performances by Jennings. During one of these events, Buddy Holly's father approached them with his son's latest record, expressing Holly's intention to produce artists himself. Corbin recommended Jennings to Holly. Upon returning from his tour of England, Holly took Jennings under his wing as his first artist. He helped improve Jennings' image by providing him with new clothes and arranging a recording session for him at Norman Petty's studios in Clovis, New Mexico. On September 10th, Jennings recorded the songs Joel Blonde and When Sin Stops, Love Begins with Holly, Tommy Allsup on guitars, and saxophonist King Curtis. Holly also enlisted Jennings to play bass for him during his Winter Dance Party tour. Before embarking on the tour, Holly spent time with his wife in Lubbock and visited Jennings' radio station in December 1958. During this visit, Jennings and Sky Corbin contributed hand claps to Holly's tune, You're the One. Shortly after, Jennings and Holly headed to New York City, arriving on January 15, 1959. Prior to a scheduled meeting at the headquarters of the General Artists Corporation, which organized the tour, Jennings stayed at Holly's apartment near Washington Square Park. They later traveled by train to Chicago to join the rest of the band. The Winter Dance Party tour kicked off in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on January 23, 1959. However, logistical issues arose due to the extensive travel required, as the distance between venues had not been adequately considered in the scheduling. Additionally, the tour buses, which lacked heating, broke down twice in freezing weather conditions. Drummer Carl Bunch suffered frostbite on his toes and had to be hospitalized. Consequently, Holly decided to seek alternative transportation. Before their scheduled performance at the Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake, Iowa, Holly chartered a 4-seat Beechcraft Bonanza airplane from Dwyer Flying Service in Mason City, Iowa. The plane was intended for Holly, Jennings, and Tommy Allsup to avoid the lengthy bus journey to their next venue in Moorhead, Minnesota. That's when the tragedy came. In his 1971 classic American Pie, Don McLean immortalized The Day the Music Died, February 3, 1959, when a plane crash tragically killed Buddy Holly Ritchie Valens and the Big Bopper J.P. Richardson during a concert tour in the United States. More than 50 years later, this tragedy was revisited in a July 2022 episode of iHeartRadio's Too Much Information podcast. Hosts Jordan Runtag and Alex Heigl dissect McLean's iconic song and delve into the events leading up to the fatal crash. Before boarding the ill-fated plane, Holly, known for hits like That'll Be the Day and Peggy Sue, was performing throughout the Midwest on the Winter Dance Party tour. He was joined by Valens, Richardson, Dion, and the Belmonts, and Frankie Sardo. The musicians dubbed the grueling series of shows the Tour from Hell, as they endured traveling hundreds of miles daily and moving all their own equipment in temperatures plummeting to 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Severe weather conditions caused one performer to be hospitalized for frostbite, and many others came down with the flu. Buddy Holly was in a terrible mood in the hours leading up to a February 2nd concert in Clear Lake, Iowa, his final performance. After the show, Holly decided to avoid the cold and rent a private plane to fly himself and some of the musicians to their next gig in Fargo, North Dakota. Holly planned to bring his band members, Waylon Jennings and Tommy Allsup, on the 3-passenger plane. However, Alsop was challenged to a coin toss by Ritchie Valens, who won the seat on the ill-fated flight. Jennings also gave up his seat to J.P. Richardson, who had the flu and wanted to see a doctor before the next performance. Supposedly, after hearing about the seat switch, Holly joked to Jennings, "Well, I hope your old bus freezes up." In an eerie response that haunted Jennings until his death in 2002, he replied, "Well, I hope your old plane crashes." The flight took off at 12:55 a.m. on February 3rd and crashed into a cornfield about 5 minutes later. The crash was believed to be caused by a weather-induced error made by 21-year-old pilot Roger Peterson, who wasn't trained to fly in such poor conditions. The tragic accident killed Holly at 22, Valens at 17, and Richardson at 28. In the aftermath, Holly's wife, Maria, learned about his death on television and later suffered a miscarriage due to the psychological trauma. Similarly, his mother heard the tragic news while listening to the radio. This event allegedly led authorities to establish protocols requiring the names of the deceased to be withheld from the public until their families had been notified. Later that morning, Jennings' family heard the devastating news on the radio that Buddy Holly and his band had been killed. In shock following the death of his good friend and mentor, especially considering his ominous parting words, Jennings barely got through the remaining 2 weeks of the tour. After informing his family, Jennings reached out to Sky Corbin at KLLL from Fargo to ensure that he hadn't been on the plane. The General Artists Corporation offered to cover the cost of first-class tickets for Jennings and the band to attend Holly's funeral in Lubbock if they performed that night in Moorhead. Although initially denied payment by the venue after their first show, Jennings persisted until they were compensated. However, the promised flights were never paid for. Despite the tragedy, Jennings and Alsop continued the tour for 2 more weeks, with Jennings taking on the role of lead singer. They received less than half of the originally agreed salary. Upon returning to New York, Jennings stored Holly's guitar and amplifier in a locker in Grand Central Terminal and mailed the keys to Maria Elena Holly before returning to Lubbock. In the early 1960s, Jennings penned and recorded The Stage, Stars in Heaven, a tribute to Valens, the Big Bopper, Holly, and Eddie Cochran, who tragically died in a road accident a year after the plane crash. Following Holly's death, Joel Blon was released on Brunswick in March 1959 with limited success. Unemployed, Jennings returned to KLLL but found it challenging to perform at the station due to the emotional toll of Holly's passing. He left after being denied a raise and briefly worked for the competition, KDAV. Rejecting an offer to join the reformed Crickets, he headed back to Texas with no intention of ever playing another note. Fortunately, Jennings overcame his grief and guilt and returned to his calling, eventually becoming a symbol of the outlaw country genre of the 1970s through career-defining hits like This Time and I'm a Rambling Man and a stubborn insistence on doing things his way. He never forgot the influence of Holly, who took the then-unknown musician under his wing and imparted some important lessons during their brief time together. "Don't ever let people tell you you can't do something," he recalled, "and never put limits on yourself." Years later, I'd be in the studio, and the track would really get in the pocket and feel good, and I'd hear those Nashville producers saying scornfully, "Man, that sounds like a pop hit," continued Jennings. "And I'd remember Buddy talking to me, telling me they thought he was crazy, as that freezing bus moved down the highway from Green Bay, Wisconsin to Clear Lake, Iowa." For years afterward, Jennings expressed a sense of responsibility for the crash that claimed Holly's life, which led to struggles with substance abuse throughout his career. In the 1970s and 1980s, Waylon Jennings battled a severe addiction to cocaine, a struggle that significantly impacted his personal and professional life. Despite facing legal troubles, including a notable bust in August 1977 where he was found with a substantial amount of cocaine, Jennings couldn't break free from the grip of addiction. His addiction reached a critical point during a 1984 performance in Portland, Oregon, where he struggled to perform, leading to disappointment from his audience. During this tumultuous period, Jennings's health deteriorated as he neglected to eat, prompting his wife, Jessie Coulter, to intervene by ensuring he consumed protein-fortified milkshakes. Despite feeling trapped in a cycle of depression and desperation, Jennings found renewed hope when Johnny Cash suggested he seek treatment at the Betty Ford Center, where Cash himself had successfully battled addiction to painkillers. Encouraged by Cash's advice, Jennings decided to confront his addiction head-on, but he opted for a different approach. Rather than pursuing traditional rehab, Jennings chose to quit cold turkey, isolating himself and his family in Arizona to focus on recovery. Before embarking on this journey, Jennings took a symbolic step by flushing $20,000 worth of cocaine down the toilet, symbolizing his commitment to a drug-free life. True to his promise, Jennings remained steadfast in his determination to overcome addiction and rebuild his life. But his tragedy did not end there. Despite enjoying immense success as a singer-songwriter and performer, Waylon Jennings found himself facing financial woes that led to bankruptcy filings not once, but 3 times throughout his illustrious career. In his memoir, Waylon, an autobiography, Jennings candidly revealed the challenges he encountered in managing his wealth, which often evaporated due to extravagant spending habits and the high costs associated with maintaining a large entourage and production crew. Jennings spared no expense when it came to his music career, employing a sizable staff that included various managers, publicists, assistants, and road crew members. On tour, he spared no expense, maintaining multiple crews, production managers, and a fleet of trucks and buses to transport equipment and personnel. These expenditures, coupled with the demands of a lavish lifestyle, quickly depleted his financial resources. In 1981, Jennings reached a breaking point and filed for bankruptcy, facing a staggering $2.5 million in debt. His financial struggles were exacerbated by his well-documented battle with cocaine addiction, a habit that not only took a toll on his health but also drained his finances. At the peak of his addiction, Jennings was reportedly spending an astronomical $1,500 per day on cocaine alone. The combination of excessive spending, financial mismanagement, and substance abuse ultimately led Jennings to confront the harsh reality of his financial situation. Despite his decision to quit cocaine in 1984, Waylon Jennings continued to grapple with health issues stemming from his past substance abuse. In October 1988, Jennings faced a serious health scare when doctors discovered a blocked artery and performed a balloon angioplasty to alleviate the obstruction. However, just 2 months later, while en route to a performance in Tennessee aboard his tour bus, the 51-year-old musician was struck by excruciating chest pains. Recognizing the severity of the situation, Jennings's driver promptly diverted the route to Baptist Hospital in Nashville. Subsequent tests revealed partial blockages in 3 of Jennings's arteries, prompting doctors to recommend immediate triple bypass surgery. Miraculously, Jennings had not suffered a heart attack, but the situation was dire enough to necessitate urgent medical intervention. Following the successful surgery, Jennings faced a lengthy recovery period during which he was advised by doctors to prioritize rest and adopt healthier lifestyle habits. As part of his regimen, Jennings had to overhaul his diet and quit smoking, a habit he had maintained for a staggering 41 years, consuming up to 5 or 6 packs a day in his later years. His romantic journey also has seen its fair share of ups and downs. Waylon Jennings's romantic journey encompassed 4 marriages, each contributing to the tapestry of his life, with his union with Jessie Coulter standing out as the most enduring and prominent. Before finding lasting love with Jessie, Jennings embarked on 3 other marital ventures. At the tender age of 17, he exchanged vows with Maxine Lawrence, with whom he shared 6 tumultuous years and 4 children. However, the union eventually dissolved, leading Jennings to seek solace in the arms of Lynn Jones in 1962. Together, they adopted a daughter before parting ways after 5 years. Following this, Jennings briefly entered into matrimony with Barbara Rhode, marking yet another chapter in his quest for lasting companionship. However, it was his fateful encounter with Jessie Coulter that would redefine his life and shape his legacy. Married in 1969, their union blossomed into a partnership that transcended the boundaries of romance, with Coulter becoming a beacon of light during Jennings's darkest moments. Reflecting on their relationship, Jennings confessed to Rolling Stone that meeting Jessie was a pivotal moment, rescuing him from the throes of self-destruction and despair. Despite their deep connection, their journey was not without its challenges, particularly as Jennings grappled with a debilitating cocaine addiction that strained their bond. There were moments of separation and strife, but their love endured. Until Jennings' passing, he and Jessie remained steadfast partners, their bond unbroken by the trials they faced. Waylon Jennings faced complications from diabetes later in his life. After overcoming his addiction to cocaine in the mid-1980s, he struggled with weight gain due to an increased appetite. Despite his efforts to maintain a drug-free lifestyle, Jennings was diagnosed with adult-onset, or type 2 diabetes, a condition common in older, overweight adults. This disease affects the body's ability to process food and regulate blood glucose levels, leading to various health issues. One significant complication Jennings experienced was peripheral vascular disease, which affected the blood flow in his leg arteries. This condition caused severe pain and required surgical intervention in April 2000 to alleviate some of the discomfort. Unfortunately, his health challenges persisted, and in 2001 he developed an infection in his foot. Due to his weakened immune system resulting from diabetes, Jennings was unable to fight off the infection, leading to the amputation of his foot. Despite medical efforts, Jennings's health continued to decline, ultimately leading to his passing at the age of 62. His death was attributed to complications related to diabetes, highlighting the serious impact of the disease on his life. Waylon Jennings's life was marked by triumphs and challenges. Despite the hardships he faced, Jennings left behind a lasting legacy through his music and the impact he had on the genre. Now, as we reflect on his journey, we invite you to share your thoughts. What aspect of Waylon Jennings's life or music resonates with you the most? Feel free to comment below and join the conversation. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates on Waylon Jennings's legacy. See you next time.